Welcome to Black Women Moguls. We are here today. We are having a summit of some fantastic speakers. All of this is brought to you by our hostess with the mostest. That is me, Linda S. Hustler, also known as the Bodacious Lifestyle Coach for Black Women over 50. I am the Bodacious Lifestyle Coach, and I am a lifestyle and self-development specialist. I created Bodacious Black Women for the special Black woman over 50, the amazing Black woman over 50 who is not ready to downshift yet, who knows that there's still more juice that you want to squeeze out of life. But sometimes we want more out of life, but we don't exactly know what more is. I can help you solve that challenge simply by going to speaktolinda.com, where you and I can have what I call my Ignite Your Life session. It's a complimentary 30-minute session where you and I do a little deep dive into what has you stuck, what has you maybe second guessing yourself. Sometimes a little self-sabotage can be sprinkled in there. So again, speaktolinda.com if you would like to unleash your inner badass, get unstuck, and unlock your full potential. Now, with that, we are going to get into it. Avery Simone is the creator of Black Woman Mogul, and she is a brand strategist, digital content creator, and mogul entrepreneur. And she has worked with nonprofits, small businesses, and national and personal brands with their brand strategy, client attraction plan, social media, and website strategy. Her expertise shows business owners how to convert followers into paying customers and teach clients how to manage their business from their phone. And you know what? It's real, because we can do so much with these phones, right? Now, her background is in public administration, and it has further enhanced her perspective of business systems. Her most notable position was working for former Governor Nathan Deal. In 2019, Avery transitioned to GTA, which currently manages the delivery of IT infrastructure services to 89 executive branch agencies and manages network services to more than 1,200 state and local government entities. At GTA, she is responsible for coordinating various projects and requisitioning funds for contractors, and has assisted with contracts worth over $60 million. Okay, Avery Simone is doing her thing. Now, she is seeing the limited opportunities for Black women in entrepreneurship. And because she saw this, Avery created Black Women Moguls. Okay, she created Black Women Moguls. And through this platform, she works with women entrepreneurs who are seeking to build a profitable brand. Outside of her entrepreneurial ventures, Avery previously served as the youngest board member, right? First vice president of a local section of the National Council of Negro Women. For her contributions to her community, Avery was awarded the NCNW Living the Legacy Award, Who's Who in Black Atlanta. You go, Avery. And Georgia Trend's esteemed 40 under 40. Is it safe to say that Avery is most definitely doing the darn thing? Yes, it absolutely is. And I am excited to be here at this summit because we've got some phenomenal speakers. And actually, we're going to have Dr. Nikki Blacksmith coming up soon. So let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Nikki Blacksmith. And all of the speakers here are absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Now, Dr. Nikki Blacksmith, she, as an industrial organized psychologist, Dr. Nikki Blacksmith has worked across industries, helped organizations attract and select high quality employees, entrepreneurs, and leaders. Her research and consulting focuses on understanding the way personality and cognitive ability predict decision making and job performance in startups and other organizations. She has published over 60 different conference papers, book chapters, and journal articles. Her scientific research has been published in top tier publications, including the Journal of Business and Psychology, Personality and Individual Differences, Journal of Personality Assessment and Intelligence. Her research has also been featured in many media outlets, including New York Magazine, Real Simple Magazine, and Bustle. Dr. Blacksmith is currently a research fellow at the Army Research Institute for Behavioral and Social Sciences and an adjunct faculty member at American University in Washington, D.C. Yes, Dr. Nikki Blacksmith is definitely showing up strong, showing up loud and proud, and I am honored to introduce her as the next speaker at the Black Women Moguls Summit. So with further ado, let's hear it from Dr. Nikki Blacksmith. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hi, so happy to be here.
Yes. All right. So tell me, what is it that you're going to be sharing with us today?
Today, I'm going to be talking about leading high performance teams, which is really a skill that any leader, regardless of where they are, needs to know.
Absolutely. And so what do you feel is the number one skill that a leader should have? Because I know there's several.
There are. Actually, I have an answer to that one. I think the number one skill any leader should have is self-awareness. And I'm actually going to be talking about why that's important today.
Okay.
But it is actually, the science has looked at self-awareness, and leaders who do not have self-awareness are 600 times more likely to derail than leaders who do have self-awareness. So it's a critical factor in understanding how to actually be an effective leader.
Absolutely. So with that, just take it away.
All right. I think I can share my screen here, right? All right, let's hope this works. Give me 1 second. Looks like it does not like my computer. I think it says processing, so I don't know if the tech needs to present it for me. I'm following the directions, but it says sorry, guys. I always have these tech issues. All right, I figured it out. Hopefully you can see that. All right. Okay, so I will be chatting about leading high performance teams. Feel free to interrupt with any questions. I'll be happy to answer them. But I will go ahead and get started. Just making sure that you all can see my screens. All right. Okay, so what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to give you a little bit of background intro about why I'm the one here talking about teams, a quick 101, just so we can all get on the same framework about what a team is and why we're talking about it. And then the focus will be on understanding the ABC high performance framework. So then I'll wrap up and call it a day. So who am I? Why am I here? I started my journey just always interested in psychology. So I have a long, detoured career journey in various psychological positions, applying psychology. So I grew up in Chicago, suburbs, not the actual city. And that is where I really kind of fell in love with psychology in high school. And I actually thought, in high school that I wanted to build personality tests. And here I am today. It's something that I do. And so it's kind of funny. I always think that, very few people know exactly what they want to do early on, but I'm one of those people. I went to the University of Iowa where I studied cognitive psychology, social psychology, and I really liked it, but I could not understand why. What was the purpose of this? What do I do with this information? And I stumbled upon industrial organizational psychology, which is actually the study of psychology in the workplace. Like, how do we use psychology to make the workplace a smarter, more high-performing place, but also, increase well-being for employees and make it a good place to work. After that, I worked for Gallup for a while as a consultant. I started external consulting, working with their clients, really driving their pre-employment phases, so recruitment and hiring, building assessments, personality assessments to predict job performance. And then I got bored. I got promoted a few times, so I was actually leader of the research and development across all of our recruitment and selection clients. And I really loved the research and science. So I went back, got my PhD at GW, did my postdoc at the Army Research Institute, where I studied decision making. And then now I'm an adjunct professor at American University, no longer at the Army. That was just a 3-year stint as a postdoc. And then I started my own company, Blackhawke Behavior Science, which is designed to focus on helping entrepreneurs, investors, incubators, anyone in the entrepreneurial ecosystem really leverage the human capital and put people over profit, put people before product, because that's really when a business becomes stable, high-performing, and effective over time. So I'm going to be talking a lot about people today because I'm a psychologist. So that is my thing, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. I'm going to start with a quote. It's a team is not a group of people who work together. Common misperception. It's actually a group of people who trust each other. And the formal definition from the science is that teams are 2 or more people. So yes, if you have 2 people, you are a team. You have to be working interdependently. So you depend on one another to get each other's jobs done. And you're all working towards a shared goal. So this is the formal definition that we use in scientific literature to study and understand teams. If it's just a group of people hanging out, that is not a team. Your leadership team in a startup all focus on building a startup, that is a team. And in a small business, leadership executive team, really what I'm going to focus on today is that leadership team. And how you as a business owner or a business leader can drive performance through understanding how to create effectiveness on your team so that can trickle down. Before I jump into it, team functioning is quite complex. If anybody leads a team, they know that already. I don't have to tell you that. But I do want to break it down into some simple process. Hopefully, if there's any engineers on the call, this should be hopefully resonate a little bit. But you can think of a team functioning as a basic input, throughput, output process. So the input is really the human capital. Who's coming on your teams? What kind of skills, knowledge, abilities, experience do they have? What are their viewpoints, attitudes, perspectives? All that comes with the person, and you have multiple people, so you have all sorts of backgrounds and perspectives and ideas, and that's really where the value of teamwork comes in. Then you take those individuals, they start working together. That's when we really see the teamwork and the performance. And then hopefully, at the end of it, there are some success outcomes, whether that's a brand new product or increased revenue. Pretty simple framework to cover the complexity of what goes on in the team. So hopefully this helps a little bit to paint the picture of how we're going to try to simplify it down. We actually created a framework at Blackhawke, the ABCs of teams, because we know teams are so complex. So we want to help simplify that for leaders to help them, take all of those things that are going on and put it into a framework that can be looked upon daily and used. And so what I'm going to be talking to you about today, hopefully most everything, you don't need to purchase any software or programs or vendors. You can hopefully go back and implement a lot of the stuff that I will share today. So what we did is the ABCs of teams starts with awareness. And I already gave a little teaser about the self-awareness. The second part is balance, and collaboration is the last. And I'm going to go through each one of these in detail and tell you how to exactly build each of these components of team effectiveness. So we'll start with awareness. Awareness is really focused on building psychological safety, trust, and cohesion. So when teams are more cohesive, you can think of them like glue that holds everyone together. When they have stronger glue, they are more likely to perform higher. So building those relationships, creating that cohesion on the team is actually a driver of team performance. And it's so critical. It's the foundation for everything else. If you do not have a foundation of trust, psychological safety, and cohesion, you're going to have other problems that trickle elsewhere. So I always start with this place because it is the easiest place to start because it makes the biggest impact. If you can just do one thing that I shared today, make sure this is it. So when we talk about awareness is really about transforming a collection of people into a single unit. So as I mentioned before, a group of people, putting them together simply is not a team. They have to really work interdependently. They have to understand that they're all working towards the same thing. And so when you get a team from a collection of people to a single unit, that's really where you see the power of teamwork. And we can do this through building self-awareness and team awareness, which is why this component is called awareness. So how do you guys do this? Let's go through that. First, members have to build self-awareness. This is the most foundational thing for any kind of interpersonal skill, relationship building. Anytime you're interacting with others, if you have self-awareness, you can be more effective. And the reason for that is self-awareness is a way to understand how others relate to you and how they perceive you. So typically when we think of self-awareness, a lot of people think of that like introspection. I understand who I am. I have this internal identity that I am connected to. But the second part of self-awareness is almost more important. That is understanding how others perceive you. So if you are truly self-aware, not only do you understand yourself, but you understand how other people see you. And that's the trick is to really get people to understand like who you are, share that with them, but then also understand how they are reacting to those aspects of who you are and your behavior. Building some self-awareness, you can do a lot of things: reflection, journaling, take a psychometric assessment. We actually built one particularly for this purpose at Blackhawke, where it was designed to help entrepreneurs gain a sense of self-awareness. And I actually shared a code with Avery and the Black Mogul team to provide a free access to this tool for you all. So that can be accessed if you have participated. Anybody here can go and take that and start building their self-awareness. The next part is to be intentional about getting to know one another, really building that team awareness. One way you can do this is to schedule intentional time where you are not talking about work, but you are only talking about who one another is and getting to know one another. Start with, personal aspects. Get to know who the person is, which characteristics kind of drive their behavior. For example, I think what drives a lot of my behavior is my drive for the future. I really think the future is so interesting because it's unknown and uncertain, and we have a paintbrush and we can design what it looks like. But with that, I have a lot of abstract thinking, really visionary, like lots of ideas all the time. Whereas my co-founder, when we first started working together, I overwhelmed her and really like intimidated her and made her feel like we weren't going to focused or getting anything done, because when I would get excited about an idea, I would share it with her. So she was just getting over Slack messages, idea. And she didn't know where to focus. And in my head, it was like, these are just ideas for the future. But she was what I learned, very concrete, linear thinker. So when I was throwing out these abstract, nebulous ideas, it was counter to how she processes information. So once I knew that, and she knew that about me, we actually work really well together now, because I can communicate better to her in a way that she understands. And when I start throwing big abstract ideas out, she stops me and asks questions so she can probe and understand better. And because she knows that I know that I only have what's in my head, not everybody else does. So she really helps me to break that down. But when we first started working together, we would have conversations and our heads would butt. We'd be talking to each other and I was just like, I don't understand why you're not getting what I'm saying. Like, it's so simple. And she would be feeling the same way. And so once we learned what was happening, because we were literally processing information and thinking about things differently in our minds, it was really hard to communicate with each other. But once we figured that out, it was so much easier to really work together. And we've leveraged some of those skill sets and way we think about things to get things done. For example, she really hates a blank page. She just kind of stares at and doesn't know where to begin. If you give me a blank page, it's the most exciting part of my day, because I'm like, anything can go here. I can, dream and create and do fun stuff. But then eventually I get to a point where I'm like, okay, I can't be the only one with these ideas. I need somebody to provide feedback, to react to this, to tell me what doesn't make sense. And that's when she's really great. And she jumps in and she's, then she has a framework, a structure to work with. And there's not this abstract idea. So she can start to really provide feedback and take it across the finish line. So we've actually switched around a lot of our work. So it always starts with me and then moves to her. And the efficiency and the time that it takes us to get things done now is so much faster than it used to be. So it's really, really beneficial just to get to know other people and how they're thinking, how they're processing information, what they care about, because it can really not only illuminate maybe some conflict or misunderstanding, but also create a way for you to work more effectively and really get that magic going on the team. So the third one is to really design a team identity. So first you have your self-awareness, you get to know others. Now let's put that all together and become one. And you can do this in many ways. I teach a leading high performance teams course at American University, and I always have my teams create team names and think of what would, if your team had a personality, what would it be like? What are the colors? What's your mascot? What song would you play on your theme track? Just anything really to help build these connections to create a single identity. And that's really when you become a team, is when you all feel like you're part of one thing rather than just a bunch of people in a room. So designing that team identity is incredible. You can use frameworks from building brand identity and apply it to teams. And you don't necessarily have to put it out there all the time if you don't want, but it does help to create that mental framework that we're all in this together. This is us, not I. It's we. Oops. Okay, that was a mistake. Sorry about that. So the last one of that is to really kind of foster that psychological safety on the team, build a environment where people feel safe sharing things. Okay, so the next part is balance. Balance is task coverage and shared understanding of what it is the team is trying to do. So when you think of balance, it's really like, if only one person knows where the direction is, that's unbalanced. If only, one person or two people are doing the work, that's unbalanced. So it's really about creating not only an understanding across everybody, but also making sure that all different aspects of the job is getting done. So to build a balanced structure, we do that through creating role clarity and a shared understanding. So this is the key to balance. First, we identify role fit. So the building the awareness is not only important because it helps you get to know your team and build that cohesion, but it also helps you start to understand who does what well and where would they best fit and contribute to the team. There's lots of research that shows people are more motivated when they're able to do what they do best. And it just feels better and it's more exciting for people. No one likes to be in a position where they are, not doing well, or they feel like they're failing or struggling. It doesn't feel good or exciting. So the goal is really to get everyone in a place where they do things best. So, for example, my co-founder, he is very good at thinking about the customer journey and the details of the product and the user experience. And so we put him in charge of our innovation task because it's really about understanding where the gaps or needs from our customers. And he's constantly talking to the customers because that's just where his brain thinks all the time. Mine is at a much higher level, like what products are we going to create? How are they all going to fit together? And so we're able to do what we do best, but also collaborate because those two things are interconnected. Let me go back for 1 second. Ways to identify role fit. When you're going through that awareness phase, make sure people talk about what they like to do. Usually what people like to do is also what they do well. What they have accomplished in the past, so you can kind of see where they fit in the role. And also just simply understanding their personality. So if they're, for example, an introvert like myself, they might not be great in a sales role or a customer client facing role. Maybe they're better at sitting behind the computer and doing data analysis, which is, one of my favorite things. I don't mind sitting behind a computer and not talking to somebody for a few hours at a time. Whereas other people, that might be hard for them because they're really extroverted and they need that interpersonal interaction. So they do better in roles where they are able to work with teams and interact with people more often. So use that part of the awareness to also understand what everybody is good at. The second part is to collectively define norms. So everyone should understand how to act on a team. Every team has kind of different norms. If you've started in a new organization and you're the new member on the team, you can look around and kind of see that, there are some unstated rules and ways to operate. They're not written down. But I highly encourage you to start by writing them down for your team so that everybody knows. This should also be highly aligned with the values of your organization so that everything kind of really fits together nice and tightly. So one of our norms and values is that we're a group of psychologists. So we want everyone on our team to feel like they can be themselves. And not only does that create a comfortable workplace, and it, offers more room for diversity and various perspectives, but also it's creates a world that, like, boundaries for how we act and perform. So, for example, we were doing a team exercise one time where we were trying to put a team slide together for a presentation, and we wanted the slide to represent everybody's personalities. And so we asked them to kind of make their backgrounds and change it to something that they thought represented who they were. And one of our team members had a background that was like very glittery and shiny, and was just like not my style personally. So I made a face. I was like, ugh. And one of my co-founders called me out and was like, Nikki, that is not okay. Like, we value everybody's uniqueness, and just because you don't like it doesn't mean that it's not great. And I was so happy he did that, because that means that we already had such a strong understanding of how we want each other to act, that we were actually holding each other accountable for those norms. Norms are also important for operating. And so that's my next one, which is a little bit separate, but think of norms as more of the behavioral expectations, where then there's norms about how do you actually operate, like standard operating procedures. This is also important, especially one for decision making. When you have a group of people, it can be very difficult to make a decision. I'll tell you a story about, I'm also on the executive board for the Society for Industrial Organizational Psychology. And on this board, there are about 15 or 16 other people. They're all tenured professors, academics, been in the university system for quite a while. And the last year together, I felt like we were just trying to make decisions, but everyone had an opinion. And so we would just talk ourselves in circles. And finally, we were like, okay, we're a psychologist. We all know, how to fix this and what to do. So we decided to set our decision-making process. So was it a consensus? Is it a majority? How do we deal with that at each point in time? So that way there is a point where it's like, okay, now we have to make a decision. Just because, one person doesn't like it doesn't mean that we shouldn't go in that direction. We need to be effective and move forward and make progress. So we have kind of a hybrid model depending on the type of decision we're making. It's either consensus or majority, or one person makes the final call. And that is a case by case on the type of decision. So the really big important decisions, maybe we require a consensus for those. So make sure that your team understands how to make decisions and who is the decision maker at the end of the day. What we do on my team is take a little bit of a shared leadership approach. I'm the CEO, so a lot of times I'll end up making the final decision, but I don't like making the decision if I don't like being the final decision maker if I'm not the expert in that area. So, for example, my co-founder has a lot of more experience in user experience, user interface, design, product development. So when those kind of decisions need to be made, I always defer to him because he's the expert. He has the most information. I'll have opinions and make my statements, but ultimately he should be the one to make the final decision. Now, if it's a decision about the scientific background of the product, that's probably something that would come to me, but we have an understanding of who does what and who owns like which, topic or category as the final decision maker. You can do this anyway. I recommend a couple tips. One is to, before you make any decision and in any kind of brainstorming process that you do, assign somebody as your devil's advocate, like the person to actually poke holes and throw up other ideas. A lot of times when you work on a team, teams tend to kind of gravitate. Somebody says an idea and then everyone else agrees. And that's what we call groupthink. And it can actually create some risk and problems for team members. So what's more important is to look at a variety of options and not just take the first option that comes to mind. So having a person that's like in charge of actually, criticizing or scrutinizing the idea that comes up first creates a way to have that disagreement and the conflict and the dialogue over where to go, which decision to make, but also removes the interpersonal feelings from it. So if that's their job, then it's not like they're attacking any one person's idea. And that's what can be problematic when it comes to teams, is the interpersonal conflict. Somebody might feel like, oh, that's my idea, and because you don't like it, I take it personally. We try to remove the interpersonal aspect out of teamwork, because when a team actually experiences task conflict, so they're having conflict over what it is they're supposed to do, that actually leads to higher performance. But you can't do that if people's feelings and interpersonal perceptions come into play, because then it creates interpersonal conflict, which actually creates negative performance. So there's two types of conflict: task conflict, interpersonal conflict, and you absolutely want task conflict, and you want to reduce the interpersonal conflict. So creating standard operating procedures that can facilitate that is really critical. Oops, wrong way. Okay, so the fourth one is ensuring that you all have shared mental models. So you've identified the role fit and responsibilities, you've defined norms, you've created standard operating procedures. Now just make sure that everybody understands that they're on the same page. Sometimes that requires that you ask, what does this word mean to you? Or what do you mean when you say that? Because everyone has their own mental model or ideas of things in their head. And a lot of times, especially if you have an interdisciplinary team, they might not align. I'm thinking of this example. When I used to work at Gallup, I worked often with the IT team, and we were a bunch of industrial organizational psychologists building tests. And in our tests, we refer to questions as items. So when I say, oh, the item, I'm talking about the actual question. But they aren't always questions. Sometimes they're statements or scenarios. So we use the word item. Well, they also use the word item, but it was a completely different, it was more like an object in their coding process. And so we would have these conversations, use the same words, but something was like not happening. And there was a lot of misunderstanding. And finally, we realized we're having the same word, but we each have a different understanding of what that means. And that fixed a lot of problems. So when I'm having meetings with my team, I often stop and ask them, okay, like, do we have a shared mental model around, what this particular thing means? Dane, tell me your opinion. What do you think? And it's often clear when there isn't a shared mental model, because you can kind of feel the tension and friction in the conversation. So that's a good point to stop and make sure that you have a shared mental model. Another great way to do it is to simply write things down and be very, very explicit about what you mean. So having the shared mental models will not only make sure your team is on the same page, but pave a pathway for effective communication. It's especially important to create shared mental models around the direction. Where are you going as a team? What are you supposed to be doing? What are your goals? Where are your priorities? If a team does not have a shared understanding of where they're going, then every member is going to be going in a different direction, and they will end up never getting where they're trying to go, because everyone's trying to get to a different place. So if you really want your team to kind of move in the same direction, you have to make sure that everybody understands where it is you're trying to go, how you're trying to get there, and what they need to do to contribute to that goal. So the last part is the collaboration. So you've built a single unit, you've defined operating procedures and norms of how you're going to accomplish the task. And then you actually have to implement and start working with the team. And the way that's important about this is that you're maximizing the human capital and that there's a seamless workflow. So the way we create a frictionless workflow is through standard operating procedures, similar to what we just talked about, but this time it's focused on the actual workflow. You have to set your goals and define your performance expectations. So what does high performance look like? How should somebody, achieve something in a way that meets your quality expectations? That's really important. If members of your team do not understand what you expect, it's difficult to get to that particular place. Performance expectations are so important because they provide that clarity. And it's if you think about it, it's basically you define the endpoint. Where are you trying to go? So when you set the performance expectations, you also create a shared mental model for the end result. What is it that you're trying to do, and how are we going to get there? And it's also creates more engagement on your team because people feel like they know what they're supposed to be doing and they know how to do it well. It's just about reaching that goal. They have tools and resources to get that done. So work with your team. What we do is we have quarterly meetings where we review our strategic goals and make a plan for, the next 2 to 3 months of how we're going to actually achieve those goals. And if things come up, which ones are the highest level priority. So that way everyone always knows where they should be spending their time. This one is a little bit maybe controversial, especially for a small business and a startup, but even more important for a small organization with a few number of people. Imagine, you have one person that is the technology person that has access to your website, that understands how your product works on the back end. And that person all of a sudden experiences, a medical crisis. Maybe they're taking care of their parents who are in the hospital for a few months at a time. That leaves you very vulnerable because nobody is there to pick up or understand how that person did the work. And you can be at a loss, and it can create a lot of problems. So one way to avoid that is to cross-train, or at least make sure that everyone understands everybody else's job, where things are saved. So if that person isn't able to show up, like, where to access documents or knowledge that can help you do what they do. And this builds a little bit of redundancy. So it builds strength on your team. If you think about, just structures and buildings, having that redundancy creates the infrastructure that is more stable. This can take more time. It often feels like, there's so many things to do. Why spend time building this redundancy? It's really a safety metric, a safety net to help you and your team really shine. And the third one is to monitor each other's performance. This is really about holding each other accountable, making sure you're meeting those performance expectations that you set. My team does this we have what we call after action reviews. So we do a quarterly after action review where we look at the last 3 months and say, what did we do well? What did we do not so great? And how can we do it better the next time? And that forces us to kind of look at it holistically, but also after any kind of big performance. Let's say we had a big client presentation. We would also stop and afterwards, talk amongst each other, what did we do well and what can we do better next time? So they are all evaluating and being part of the process of figuring out, how do we improve our performance? No matter who you are, there's always going to be room to grow. And so when your team can collectively feel like they're growing together, that makes them stronger. And it also keeps your eye on the performance so that you're constantly, you don't just get in that mode of where you work, but also okay, now let's stop and review, how are we doing and how can we do better? And those can be really great conversations. I simply send out a survey with 2 or 3 questions to my team. Everybody responds, and then we come back together. And usually there's very big themes. We all kind of agree on the same issues at hand, which is comforting. If we're all sharing different things, and I would be worried about our shared mental models and how we're moving forward. So these things all interact together, which is why I have them kind of replicating, because I'm providing them to you in a linear context, but these things, there's no one single process for it. These things should be happening throughout your team cycle all the time. And then so you collectively evaluate the performance, which is what I was talking about as well. So review it, make sure you're getting things done, and then talk about how you did. Create metrics. This is really where you identify those key performance indicators for your team. I think I have a couple minutes left. This is, just a thank you. That's my co-founder, Dane, the one I was talking about, who has a lot of user experience and user interface, and we really work great together because we apply all of those team concepts to our own team, for not only just the two of us and the co-founders, but as our larger team as well. On the right side, you will see our social media, our website, and email. I love talking about this stuff. I've been studying and thinking about industrial organizational psychology for almost 20 years now. So if you have any questions, please reach out, because I get excited when other people get excited about this stuff and are thinking about this stuff. And I started Blackhawke because I worked with large organizations that they were stable, right? And they focused a lot on teamwork. But to me, the most important place to really focus in building that people structure is when you first start. Because if you build it from the start, you can create very strong structure for scaling, and also prevent problems from happening. Instead of treating them like, oh, the team conflict's coming up, you can prevent the team conflict by creating that role clarity, getting to know each other, having an open communication, making sure everybody knows, who's doing what. So I hope that you all can at least take a few tips away and improve your team performance as you begin to grow your organization. Thank you. I'm happy to answer questions.
Well, that was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for that. I tell you, it seems like it seems really simple, but what you have really shared is that it takes some doing. It takes some really thinking about how is it that you really are going to lead your team successfully. And that is so important. So thank you so much for that. And I'm pretty sure, absolutely confident that those tips will definitely be taken to heart and that they will be used to improve a lot of the workspaces that we may find ourselves in. So thank you so very much for that. And that was awesome. So coming up next.